Hello everyone, my name is Aster, and today I'm going to be performing a quick start guide on how to get yourself familiarized with the BitBay Market Client. Some of the things you may need to familiarize yourself with beforehand are very basic computer literacy things, like being able to download a program, install a program, and then launch an application, or the program itself I should say, and perhaps some other very basic things like what is a cryptocurrency, what is a blockchain. I will be going over some of those things in a very tertiary sense, but if you need more information, there are many more resources online. But seeing as that's kind of beyond the scope, I won't be going into great depth with it. The idea is to get you started from essentially nothing to being comparatively familiar with BitBay in a relatively short period of time, or your money back, but it's free. So to start, what is the very first thing you want to do? Well, you want to go to the bitbay.market website, and from there you'll want to go to the download section. And once you get to the download section, you'll have your choice of Linux, Mac, PC, so on and so forth, and you'll be offered two different programs. One is the BitBay client, which is essentially the marketplace. The other one is the BitBay wallet, which is, as you might understand, it's just a program to send, receive, and retain currency. Now, the client is much more of a utilitarian and more useful program than the wallet. With the wallet, you can only send, receive, or store currency. That's really all you can do. But the BitBay client allows you to enable smart contracts, to send currency, to receive currency, to enable the staking process, and actually you can also do the staking process on the wallet, but we'll cover that later. You're also able to talk to people with open contracts. Many different things you're capable of doing. But point of note is that you can only run one of these clients at a time. So for example, if you have a BitBay client installed on your computer and you have the BitBay wallet installed on your computer, only one can be run at one time because they are synchronizing the blockchain. And it's essentially the same program trying to use the same file, which, as we know, generally doesn't work out. So you can only run the client or the wallet, not both at the same time. So the very first thing you'll want to do is you want to download, install the program, go through that whole process, choose where it is you want in the directory to install it. And once you get to that point, you will then be able to launch BitBay by clicking on the icon or what have you. You have to click yes, and you'll be shown the splash page, and then the program will launch. Now, point of interest, when you initially start, and this is your very first launching of the program, you will have to synchronize with the blockchain. And in fact, you have to synchronize with the blockchain every single time. Seeing as I have already synchronized with the blockchain today, it's a relatively quick process. If you are starting up for your first time, this process may take anywhere from 2.5 hours to 6 hours, or even longer. This is entirely dependent upon your computer or configuration and your internet speed. But essentially, the very first time you load up, you should just leave the program open and let it synchronize. The reason why it's synchronizing is that a blockchain is essentially an open ledger. It's a collection of every single transfer that has ever happened in the currency. And this is important because this allows for transparency and for independent verification. But in general, its purpose is to keep everyone on the same page. And this is obviously important when you're trying to have a marketplace. Because if a marketplace doesn't have synchronized contracts, then you will not know necessarily what is or is not available. So once you get everything synchronized, the very first thing you'll want to do is you want to make a new wallet. Just choose normal account for your first one. Now, I've already performed this new wallet function, so this is what's important to understand with this. Every wallet has two keys that are specific to that wallet. Just because you make a key that says key 1 private, what have you, just because the name information, the top layer says one thing does not necessarily mean that the interior information in the file itself will be the same as what you made before. Why is this important? What does that mean? These keys are individual to your wallet. Never lose them. never delete them, or if you do delete them, make sure you have copies of them somewhere safe. Because this wallet, these keys are different than these keys. So after you decide to, let's say, make new key 1, say, and now here's your second key, new key 2, for example, say. And now you have just made your own personal wallet for BitBay. Now that you have a wallet, you're able to do a lot of different things. You're able to send, you're able to receive. Once you send and receive, you're able to look at your history. But obviously the next question is, well, okay, I have a wallet, now how do I fill it with BitBay? Well, there are multiple ways to do this. You're capable of contacting people on the marketplace, and this person has set up a smart contract to, in this case, he's selling Bitcoin for USD. Now, if you contact this person, I'm quite sure he will be quite happy to, through your emails, for example, you can contact this person through your email, and he will be quite happy to sell you Bay. But you're also capable of contacting people through the chat, which is a very simple. For example, you make a handle, new person, and you have questions, and you say, I don't know what to do. How do I get BitBay currency? You'll be thrown into the channel, and you'll be able to ask questions, interact with people, and obviously if they're there. These are some useful links as well. The BitBay.net is a forum, and Bitcoin Talk is a cryptocurrency forum, which is a very specific thread dedicated to BitBay, which you can read or peruse or ask questions. But that's going a bit beyond the scope. Question, how do you get BitBay? Well, and then there's even more options, which is where you can go to an exchange like Poloniex or Bitrex or Cryptopia, or Yobit or what have you. And this is where you'll exchange Bitcoin for the Bay currency. So in this case, it's going to be, say I want to search Bay, BAY is the ticker. And here, as for example, and this will be very similar across all exchanges, be able to buy or sell currency. How do you do this? Usually you have to get Bitcoin before that. How do you get Bitcoin? Well, you can go to places like Coinbase or Kraken, and you send them USD and they will send you Bitcoin. Or you can go to a website called Local Bitcoin, and there you can buy Bitcoin at a premium for cash or any other method of payment. This is a very flexible sort of system, or very fluid system, where you can take currency from one area, one blockchain, and put it into another. This is facilitated through exchanges, but I feel we're going beyond the scope here. So let's go back to the client. So let's say that hypothetically you got BitBay. Doesn't really matter how, but you got it, right? So what you'll do is you'll go to your wallet, and if you only have one wallet, then you'll automatically open the very first wallet which you have. So say wallet 1, or correction, key 1, and then key 2, and then that'll be your wallet. So you have 30,000 Bay, just like me. So now, well, what can I do with this? Well, there's lots of things you can do with this. You've already gone through the process of saying, hey, I want to send Bay, which should be very obvious. So pay 2, that is where you're sending money or Bay to another individual's wallet. So how do you know what their wallet address is? Well, you either have to ask them, or you can look at where it is on the marketplace, what have you. But a very simple idea of sending it from one address to another. How do you find out what your address is? Well, you go to here. This is your BitBay address for your wallet, and this is very specific to you. In the same way that the 2 keys in order to access your wallet are specific to that wallet, this address is very specific to you and to your wallet. So this is to receive Bay, which makes sense, right? Now, this is a function which is useful for contacting people via email on the marketplace. And this will show up in the contracts portion when you have an escrow set up. But what does this mean? What is the bit message? It is essentially email that's encrypted through the Bay program. as a top layer, if that makes sense. So it more effectively anonymizes you if you so wish to be anonymous. Um, Easiest way to set this up is essentially adding your email address. As a for example, you would type in the email address and then you would type in whatever the password to that email address is, and then it would enable encrypted email in this case. Now, some individuals have had trouble enabling BitMessage, and the easiest workaround for that at the moment is, as a for example, if you have the Gmail, you go to manage your accounts and access and security settings. Basically, you go to your security settings on your account. Should be relatively the same for all platforms. And then you go down and you go allow less secure apps on. This will allow the BitBay program to access your email and to send encrypted messages through it, so you can talk to other individuals through the BitMessage program. If you don't want to use the program, if you feel it's not quite so secure, then just don't use BitMessage. Just throw up your email every time you want to interact with someone, and then you can contact one another through email. Very simple. Now, we've gone through having a wallet, which should be the very first thing you get. We've gone through sending Bay, receiving Bay, what it is your address is, what it is that BitMessage is. Here is where you can look at all of your transactions you've made. Here is where you can go to the IRC and ask questions and maybe take a look at a link. Here is actually one of the most important parts of the BitBay client. This is what is called a smart contract. Now, what is a smart contract? Smart contract is a self-enforcing contract where two individuals put money into escrow until such time where the contract is complete, where they both agree that the criteria of the contract has been accepted or accomplished or what have you. Obviously, that's a little complicated, so let's go through a practical example. So let's say I want to sell a book. Now, obviously, being a buyer or a seller just makes better sense to give a better description, more information about what it is you're selling, but for the sake of demonstration, we'll just say this is the book. And then if you have a picture of the book, you would attach an image. Let's say you want to send the contract to someone very specific, you can do that, but that would require their contact information. But if you just want to throw up a contract on the marketplace so anyone can interact with it, what you'll do is you'll say, here's a description, here's an image, and then of course you'll be thinking, well, how much do I want to sell it for? So for the sake of argument, sell it for 1,000 Bay. Now, very important portion. Take a look at this little drop-down window. This is what dictates whether or not someone else is paying you or you are paying them. So I pay this amount is for a contract where you're trying to hire someone for a job. The other party pays this amount is for when you're selling something. You could hypothetically get caught up, and if you don't pay attention to this little window, you could be paying someone else. So for example, the way that this contract is set up right now is that you're paying someone 1,000 Bay to buy a book from you, which doesn't make sense, right? They should be paying you because you're selling it. So other party pays this amount. You can dictate the fee. Say the fee is 1, whatever, right? Usually most people don't use fees, just for the attractiveness of it being a marketplace which essentially has no fees. But 0.01 is like, it's less than a cent, let me put it that way. So this is the basic part of any contract. You're talking about eBay, you're talking about Amazon. You know, you say that this is what I'm selling, here's what it looks like, these are the people I'm sending it to, this is the amount. This is where a smart contract becomes different from any other normal contract you may be familiar with. This is what we call escrow. Now, what is escrow? Escrow is where two individuals deposit agreed upon currency into a account that cannot be accessed until they both agree that the contract which they engaged in has been completed. So what does that mean? So let's say you're a seller, and you're going to say, well, I'm selling it for 1,000, but my inventory cost is only actually 200. So you as a seller, you would lose, hypothetically, if you did not perform this entire contract, you would lose 200 Bay plus a book. And this is obviously on the seller's end, so let's say that, you know, you're going to say, hey, if the person wants to purchase from me, they're going to have to put in 500 Bay, which is 50% of the cost of the item. And it's going to, and the time limit to complete this entire transaction is going to be, let's say, decent amount of time, 15 days, a little over 2 weeks. So what does this mean? So this is why this is a self-enforcing contract. Let's say that a seller, his inventory cost is 100, he sells it for, he deposits 200 and then sends someone a book. And the person wants to buy the book for 1,000 Bay, so they deposit 500. Now both people have skin in the game, right? They've already spent money and put it into escrow, which they cannot touch unless both parties agree that they want to release it. But because now both people have skin in the game, there's no incentive really to cheat anyone else, because if the transaction did not go through within 15 days, let's say that the seller sends the person a book and the person doesn't receive the book, or it's not the book that they agreed upon, now the seller is going to lose the book that he sent them. He's going to lose 200, and essentially he is out almost double his inventory. And then the person who deposited 500 Bay is out 500. So in this case, no one won in this situation. Now let's flip that on its head, and let's say that the seller sends the book. He does absolutely everything he wants, and then the buyer is saying, let's say the buyer actually received the book, but he's saying he didn't receive it. Well, now that buyer obviously got the book for 500 Bay. So if I was a smart seller, what I would do instead would say 2,000 Bay. So now no one wants to pay twice the amount for a book that they want to buy. So now basically, let's say that the seller is keeping the book and saying they didn't receive it. So now they paid double for that book. And well, the person who sold is only out double the inventory. But either way, in this case, no one is winning the situation. Now it's only until that both parties agree that the contract was completed successfully that they get back both these amounts. So for example, seller sends the book to the buyer receives the book, they're happy with it, and it's completed within 15 days. What happens is that then that money then gets taken out of escrow, gets sent back to both parties, and then the buyer gets charged 1,000 Bay. So essentially the net total for them is still 1,000 Bay, but they had to have 2,000 Bay in capital to start this whole contract. And this is one of those things where, because this person has actual product, they're putting in less deposit because that product has value. And this is going to be something where the buyer and the seller can haggle for this, where they can decide to change specific things, or they can say, well, I'm not paying for shipping, you have to pay for shipping, so on and so forth. This is where the BitMessage function comes in, and it's also where just the idea that because there are no seller's fees and it's entirely a voluntary smart contract, this is going to be something where both people feel that they are benefiting from the situation. And you can only be scammed if you enter into a contract wherein you are essentially putting yourself in a poor position. Quite usually, because they are smart contracts, most individuals in general are going to try to accomplish the criteria of those contracts because they want their money back out of escrow. Because otherwise, let's say that the worst case scenario, person sends a book, other person says he never receives it. No one wants to give up, no one wants to take their money back out of escrow because they don't feel the contract was completed. That money is now dead money. That escrow becomes locked. The money is irretrievable. No one can get it. And this is something which it requires more capital, but at the same time, it ensures that you don't really need to trust someone because you are essentially relying on other people's greed or their desire to attain money. Because it's the idea of the profit loss scenario. And this is, of course, going beyond the scope, but this is a relatively deep topic, but very easy to screw up, so it requires a little bit more explanation. And so once you make this contract, let's say, So you create the contract, and it'll require you to make an automatic backup. Sure. So create the contract, and now you will have to type in your password in order to actually get your contract up in the marketplace. This will be a test contract for the purpose of the video, but well, fuck.